All right, Andrew Drummond, welcome to the Single Track Podcast.
Hey, Finn. Thanks for having me.
I think the place I want to start is around your history on the Appalachian Trail. I just finished reading the book North by Scott Jurek. It details his 2015 FKT attempt, or he got the FKT on the AT, and you played a pivotal role in one of the most dire points of his journey. So maybe we start there. Can you talk about that experience?
Sure. Yeah, that was that summer was really the year I got into trail running. I think I really dove in full force, and it just happened to be the year that Scott was doing his AT attempt, and it was pretty crazy because I've been following the sport since I would say 2012. You know, I read Born to Run. I learned about Leadville. I was just really getting into it, thinking about how fun it would be to do an ultra. And that summer I'd already signed up, I think, for the Vermont 50. So I was already into training and thinking about how to prepare for that race. But anyway, Scott's speed effort, I was following from afar, and I didn't want anything to do with it. I didn't want to be part of a circus. I just sort of wanted to let him do his own thing, even when he was coming through the White Mountains. But it was like, he must have been in Vermont when I got a phone call from Timmy O'Neill, who was helping to crew him. And all of a sudden it was like one of those drop everything moments. If someone asks you to come crew for Scott Jurek, you quit what you're doing. And I just happened to not be doing much to go meet up with him for pretty much the 100 miles that goes through the White Mountains. But initially it was just like, come meet at Moosilauke and we'll go from there, see how it goes. And however I could help, I was going to help, but I really didn't know what to expect. I didn't have experience crewing, and certainly didn't know how fast he was going to be moving. I mean, that's always a concern. I think like it's easy to get intimidated by other runners that, can be fast, but in hindsight, it was like, there was so much I learned that I could have done better. But that was a huge moment for me.
He paints a picture in the book of that section, just being very pivotal, but also he's losing a lot of time. He's slowing down. He appears malnourished in a lot of photos in the book. It looks like he has to use basically every single hour of the day to get his required mileage done. You were there in the moment. Was it everything it was cracked up to be in the book? Like, what was it like?
It was pretty dramatic. I think he was not the person that you read about. He was not the person you see in interviews. He was a bit of a shell of himself, but also just like stripped down and like pure. I think that's a beauty of the trail, is that it really cuts the bullshit out. And Scott was focused on what he was doing, the task at hand. He was tired. There were moments where he wasn't like always chipper and nice. And it's good to see that he's human, but he was also really courteous to others on the trail and really genuinely interested in other through hikers and what they were up to, where they were going, their trail names, all sorts of stuff. So he was still like really interactive on the trail, and that was cool to see. And, but the White Mountains were like hitting a wall. He just gone through a really hard section of Vermont that didn't really set him up well. It was, notoriously muddy and slow. And all of a sudden you have this stretch of 100 miles with 30,000 plus vertical and some of the most technical terrain that you'll hit on the whole Appalachian Trail. And it's towards the end, and he had already had some injuries and stuff slowing him down. So the deadline and trying to do the rough math, it wasn't looking great. Like, he had to really move. And I think his expectations and his crew's expectations were much higher than they should have been. In hindsight, you read the story and it's like what he was trying to cover, the mileage in days, like trying to keep up this pace of 40 something miles just isn't realistic when you're that worked. So anyway, like what he wrote in the book was pretty accurate.
Yeah. Can you talk about, because it just seems like it was such a formative experience for you as well. Can you talk about where you were at in life prior to that opportunity, and then the impact that it had on you as a result, and what you did as a result?
Yeah, I don't know what track I was on, but I think like there is like this pre Scott Jurek time in my life and the post Scott Jurek. And beforehand, the preceding summer, I just moved back to New England from San Diego. I'd done about 10 years living out there in Baja and doing a lot of surfing, refocusing my life and like the sports that interest you. And at that point, surfing was my thing. I'd grown up ski racing and ski patrolling, and that was part of my identity. And it just got stale. And once I moved to San Diego and really went all in on surfing, everywhere I traveled, my vacations were really centered around surfing. I was in Hawaii for a summer. I got to travel to India, Sri Lanka, South America, Peru, really anywhere there's ocean, there's surf. But when I moved back to the mountains of New England and specifically the White Mountains, my focus changed, and I was really excited to be back here where I grew up and rediscover the White Mountains and also just trail running and outdoor sports. And when I moved back here, I did everything. I did snowshoe running. It was like winter. I was in Nordic leagues, alpine race leagues, and got into some road racing. But ultimately, that summer of 2014, when I moved back, I wasn't really signed up for anything. And I signed up for a half marathon. This all started with my partner, Hillary. She was doing this duathlon called the Wild Man. And it's a 10K run and then a bike, about a 20-mile bike up to Pinkham Notch to Wildcat Ski Area, and then you run up the mountain. And I was up at an aid station to cheer on, and all of a sudden, Chris Freeman, a Nordic Olympian, comes flying up, and I'm like running up, like cheering him on, and he's flying, like I could barely keep up. But after that event, and Hillary like might have won or did really well, and I was like, why am I not doing this? I mean, I'm competitive, I'm athletic. I feel like I could have fun doing some of these events, and that just kind of lit the match that led me down the path of, all right, so I'm going to do a half marathon. How do I train for that? Maybe I'll do a 5K, and I'll find a 10K, but that 10K will be part of an Olympic distance triathlon, and I'll meet friends through all these sports, and they'll pull me into winter activities. And there's different run groups here in New Hampshire, and they host events, and just this rabbit hole where it wasn't all in on skiing. I think that's what I do the most of now, and more mountain trail running, but it was try a little bit of everything. And then come the next year, that 2015 was like, okay, I've sort of built up this base, and the ultra stuff seems more interesting, and that's where I want to go. So, Scott Jurek came, and he just showed me that like there's so much to be gained from pushing yourself, from doing these big projects where things might not always go as planned. You can fail, but like you put it out there, you make these big plans. And then, when Scott did the AT, it was like, he left the White Mountains, and it was so fun. And I got so lost in the moment for like these 3 days. So I did the first day with him, and we said, all right, let's keep going. We linked up with another friend, and that was like Tristan Williams. And he used to work in he worked in the hut construction crew. And so I followed him and Scott. And then the last, we stayed up at Mitzvah Hut. And then the next day, the last day, we met up with another friend, Gabe Flanders, and we helped Scott get through that last section of the Wildcat Carter Mariah range. And we slept like a little bit in the imp shelter. It was crazy. It was just like nonstop, getting a few hours of sleep here and there. And it was really like my first experience doing anything like that.
Yeah.
And after that happened and he left and went to the next section in Maine, I was just like really defeated. I was like, and I was kind of sad. I equate it to like being at college and everyone leaves and you're just stuck there. Everyone goes to summer break and you're just left there wondering what you're going to do with yourself. And so I went up, Hillary and I went up to meet Scott in Baxter State Park. It just lined up to be on a weekend, and we reconnected, and super cool. Like went in, we're at A-Ball Bridge. Yeah. Someone like looked like they were looking for Scott as well. And it was it was one of like Topher Gaylord's buddy, Levi Miller, who's from Maine. I didn't know him. And so Levi and I went in to find Scott. We ran in like 7.5 miles into the 100-mile wilderness from A-Ball Bridge, and then found him. He didn't even recognize me. He was so gone, until like, and he was with Chrissy Mel, and I don't know, if he was with Topher or someone else at that point, but found him running back, and halfway back to A-Ball Bridge, he's like, he put it together who I was. And it was crazy. It was like, we just had a moment. It's like, wow. I didn't want to say anything, didn't want to disrupt. I was just kind of like a fly on the wall. And at that point, there was a couple other locals from Maine that showed up, and yeah, the rest of the trail was with him all the way up to the top of Katahdin. But it was so gratifying to be part of that project, to watch him hit his goal. And then it just made me really think about my life and what am I doing and how can I set myself up to have some sort of adventure like he had. And this sort of dovetails into the White Mountain Direttissima, which was a project that, like, it was almost instantly I sought after. When Scott wrapped up, I was thinking, like, what really excites me and motivates me. And it's like the 4,000 footers here, and peak bagging is such a huge thing in the White Mountains. And some people have been doing it all in one push, pretty much self-supported or unsupported, traveling from peak to peak on foot, and really getting creative with trail choices and how to do it efficiently. And I was like, oh, that's perfect. So I just started scheming. So I had that Vermont 50 race in September, but the next summer I was like, all right, I'm going to do this. So I gave myself like this year window to train and do a lot of other events, but focus on trail running and just hiking in the White Mountains.
What's involved in the Direttissima? Can you spell that out for us, and like the setting for it, and then how you prepare? Because that's pretty cool. Yeah,
it was sort of this really neat project that I tried to drum up a lot of attention, tried to get some sponsors involved just to like share it and make people more aware that, hey, there's this really fun way to fast pack the 48, and there's some history behind it. Like, I forget the year that I should look this stuff up, have this stuff on a file here, but it had been done before, like, I forget how long ago. And, the style it had been done would have been like 19 days. This husband and wife couple been getting a ride from like where they started off and like going home and sleeping and then coming back and picking up, sort of section hiking it. And then I think I heard about Arlette Lawn when she did it, and she'd been, I don't know, 10 days or something, somewhere in that wheelhouse. And then there was like a record of like 8 days, but I wasn't really interested in a fastest known time or record. I just wanted to do it in my style, whatever way that was, and see what that meant. And that could be like, can I do it in a week? Can I, I'm just going to travel fast and light. And it's about 240 miles, maybe 80,000 feet, and all this, White Mountain terrain, which is really slow, and using mostly trail. Like there's a couple off trail sections, but it's going to take 7 days. It's like, what do you bring for a 7-day trip for, someone that has no experience doing, fast packing? And then also just like, what do you need for nutrition and supplies? And so that part was really fun, is like the logistics of it. And, I just trying to find a good weather window, that's going to treat you well, whether that's like the heat, humidity, rain, daylight. There's lots of factors to think about. And then your fitness, like, are you fit? Are you prepared for it? So this really neat project where it's like a microcosm for the AT, where I didn't have 40 something days, 50 days to go do a project like that. But what could I do in my backyard, and how could I give myself the opportunity to succeed at something or fail? I looked at it like, yeah, I'm going to get this done, but anything can happen. And then how can I share it? And so being social, inviting people to come out with me, and taking photos and having sort of this real time storytelling as it unfolds was like such a fun, it appealed to me. Like, this is going to be like a blast. It's going to be hard, but it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, just to close the book on the Scott Jurek part of this conversation, I was actually thinking about this before the interview, and it's interesting that a lot of us, myself included at times, we tend to think of running as this very selfish activity. We're kind of going into our own inner worlds. But this example of you meeting Scott out on the trail and running the whites with him, and then reconvening at Katahdin, and then just like reevaluating parts of your life and doing the Direttissima and just going all in with like the running story, which we'll talk about later. It's so cool. And it just shows that running can be this incredible platform to serve other people. It may not be in a direct way like in other professions, but I just find that so cool. And I wonder how many other folks are out there like yourself who got impacted by that FKT he did back in 2015. And it's just cool to think about. So yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it's life changing. I think like I was reading Eat and Run or one of his books. I remember I was at the surf break down like Scorpion Bay down in Baja, reading his book. And then next thing you know, just like teleport me, I'm on the trail with him. It's pretty surreal. And, you know, after the fact, like Scott he's like, you know, wishes me a happy birthday on my birthdays. He like took the time to like, you know, text me, or it's just crazy. Like you think like one of these guys, that you just read about and it seems untouchable is just so genuine. And, I was out in Boulder, went out to dinner with him and his family, and it's, he's the real deal. Like you meet someone like that, it's impossible not to be changed. And then, so you have these like this trickle down effect where it's like, it made me think about my life a little differently. And, it's infectious. Like when someone has success like that, it's hard not to want a little bit of that. And I think that, I hopefully, you know, when I went out and did the Direttissima and got into that, like that people watched and people learned, and they're like, oh, this is something that I could do. Or, you know, how can I hike the 48? And like, even if it's just like, now I give presentations and have material to share and what I learned and pass that along. But it totally is this butterfly effect where like, I don't know where my life would be, but it was like, I met Timmy O'Neill, and like, he's sharing a lot of information with me, and like, you know, here's some companies, here's some contacts and who you work with. And I don't know, it's the whole thing was pretty magical.
Well, on that topic, you've done an awesome job in the last 5 to 6 years of being an ambassador for the Whites, and particularly, in my opinion, documenting your athletic career and all of your adventures in the White Mountains through YouTube and Instagram and other forms of social media. And, you know, content creation, it's growing in our sport, but there's still only a handful of people that I think are quote unquote household names in our sport. And I think you're one of them. So starting with, how did you get into it? Like, where does that skill set, that like marketing mind come from, and that desire to show the world what you're doing?
Well, yeah, that's a huge, compliment, and I have to like acknowledge all of the badasses that came before me, and like everyone from, you know, Andrew Thompson, who has like, he had the AT speed record, he's got the 48. Actually, I met him on the trail with Scott Jurek. Had no clue who he was, thought he was just some frat guy, and he's like talking about, he's like, I asked him if he'd done 100-miler before. He's like, I did Barclays, and I was like, cool, and that was that, and I didn't know anything about it. And like Sue Johnston came by, and she's a legend. And like all these other people like Ben Nephews, Ryan Welts, Adam Wilcox, Christina Fulsick. There was just like Kevin Tilton. There's like a crew of people that were doing amazing stuff in the White Mountains. And I came into it with like a little different spin where I'm like, I want to do that stuff too, but I'd love to like really share it and document it, because there's that chip on your shoulder when your mountains aren't getting the recognition that they should get. And it's not that I want things to get overcrowded and popularized, but there is like something, one part ego, one part like you really genuinely care about the protection of your homeland, and you want to share that. So, to put it concise, like what I was like really trying to do was like, what path do I have like in life? Like, can I do something creative? Can I take photos and videos and start doing some projects, so to speak, where I'm like getting funding from companies or something? You know, I didn't know. I was just kind of a shot in the dark trying to see what career path I was going to do. I moved back to New Hampshire with nothing lined up. I just had some money, and that was it. I had a dog, puppy, and I was like, I'm just going to go out and spend a lot of time in the mountains, and maybe something will come with it, maybe not, but it's like, I got to just go out and try. I enjoy doing it. And so that's how I felt I should be spending my time. But it's, you know, along with that, it's like you go into shops, and there's like, you know, perfect example. It was like the Patagonia shop in Freeport, Maine had this beautiful photo of Lac Blanc and Chamonix. And it's like, you've got Baxter State Park in your backyard. Why don't you have photos from from there, like the knife edge or something really relatable, because that's the big thing about like getting people out into the mountains and showing what's accessible, what's in their backyard. You don't need a plane ticket. You don't need a guide. It's right here. And that's one thing that like I really took away from, just being around here, being in the Northeast, is that all these brands have their headquarters. A lot of brands are headquartered here, but a lot of brands are headquartered out west, and just trying to regionalize things. And like, you have this market that's thirsty for the outdoors, but maybe they just need a little motivation to access it or something, So whether that's just planting that seed to show them that it's right here, they can have it.
I think of like all the work, for example, that Billy Yang has done on the storytelling front with a lot of West Coast athletes. And you mentioned people like Ben Nephew and Andrew Thompson and Tristan and Christina. It'd be kind of cool to have like a similar content series doing a lot of storytelling around what those folks have done in the whites and in the greens and up in Maine. Cause like Ben Nephew, for example, he comes to mind. That guy has done some of the, he set a lot of the precedents for a lot of FKTs, as you know, in New Hampshire. And there's a lot of stories that I think are left to be told there. And I don't know if that's something that interests you, but it just came to mind.
No, I think like I'm so raw and unpolished in like the documentary, like storytelling world. I'm so quick to, all right, let's go get stack some clips, edit it quick, move on. Like what's next? Like it takes a lot of patience. The stuff that like Billy Yang does is so well done. And that's like, it's in hindsight, I sometimes wish I had that patience to do things like that. But yeah, you're right. Like there's always a new generation of runners and people doing like big things in the Northeast. And like, I look at stuff right now and it's like, you got Jack Kensel coming out this next week to, give a stab at the White Mountain 100, trying to do that in under 24 hours, which is insane. And setting FKTs in the Hut Traverse and the Prezi Traverse, and like the battle for the Prezi Traverse between, him, you got Jordan, Ben Thompson, and those all the New Yorkers that have been coming up, Ryan Atkins. And, I don't know. It's, there's lots of storylines, interesting things happening. I mean, I remember when the Pemi Traverse just seemed like it just would trade hands few times every summer. That was like, I know like when Adam Wilcox was doing it a bunch, and Ben Nephews, and who am I missing? Ben Thompson got in there, and then Patrick Carron, and then Ben Thompson took it back. And when Ben Thompson took it back from Patrick Carron, I was like, wow. Cause, Patrick Carron was like one of the first to go under 6 hours, and it just like these little barriers that keep getting broken. And then like Jordan goes out on a training run, a scouting run, and is feeling good and ultimately gets it. And then that same, I don't know, like not long before that, Jack had gone out doing something similar, and was, this new caliber of athletes coming out, mountain runners that are so focused on the speed end of things that it's like, it's exciting. Like it's just like going to attract a deeper pool of talent to come out. And there's lots of stories to be told, and there's so much different things happening on the scale. When I was talking about peak bagging, you've got like Jason Beaupre, I don't know how to say Jason's last name, but him and his partner Leah are out doing like, Jason's done a double grid. So he's gridded out the 4,000 peaks. He's done, so that's, each peak in each month on the calendar year, a couple times. And it's just wiping the slate clean, because he's not contributing to his second grid with anything he did during that time window for his first grid. It's hard to explain like the determination it takes to do stuff like that. But there's the full spectrum.
I think I used to ask the wrong question a lot on this podcast, which was, why are all of the elite athletes in our sport concentrated in the Mountain West, in the West Coast? And the more I've talked with folks like you who are based in the East Coast and the Northeast, I realize that that's not the case at all. It just tends to be the case that a lot of the best athletes are more or less opting out of the traditional event experience. They're more into the FKT scene. Folks like Jack Kensel, who are going for the White Mountains 100 next week. And I don't think Ben Thompson does a lot either outside of the FKT scene. And Jordan's like a biker, I think, outside of it. So I guess what I'm trying to drive to is, why do you think like our sport is so West centric when it comes to like the way the media talks about it, and even the way brands promote the sport? Like you mentioned at LL Bean, there's photos of like, you know, the 4-pass loop in Aspen and, you know, Chamonix, when like there's Mount Katahdin right there outside their door.
Well, there's no denying like the raw talent that's out West, because it's so easy to just move somewhere where the running is like 12 month season running, like of good training grounds at altitude. And that's great. Like I think it's really similar to how skiing is that like you're going to get an extended ski season, better quality skiing out West, but it's not to say you can't get it here. And with the talent, like we get a lot of talent from, I'd say, the Nordic scene. That's where like Jordan came from. That's where like some of the other female runners definitely come from. But the Nordic background. I went up and did a Pemi loop with Noah Hoffman, who is like a U.S. Olympian Nordic skier, and man, like we both had heart rate monitors on, and I was like 20 beats higher than him. Like he was just cruising, and no, it's just they have come from like such a proven training system, like of just lots of running, lots of volume, periodized, lots of biking, lots of Nordic rollerblading and other crazy things. Like takes a lot of discipline what they're doing, but they're building these monster bases that allow them to go like basically go professional in any sport they want, you know, when they work that hard. And it's really a testament to like the training that they put in. But Vermont is such like a hot spot too for the Nordic scene, and I think watching a lot of people come out of those programs have great success in the trail running scene. It's just like, oh yeah, whoa, like there's a lot of potential that's going to keep coming out from those things. I remember seeing David Sinclair when he won Speed Goat. It was like, where's he from? Oh, Vermont. Okay, he must be a Nordic skier. And I was like, yeah, okay. So it's just, you know, we're just seeing that a lot in the sport, and I think it's going to continue to be this crossover. Nordic skiers get pulled into trail running because they just go out on these 5-hour training runs in Vermont in the most technical terrain as well, and so they're used to that, and they've got huge engines. But anyway, yeah, I would say that there's a little bit of both, right? Like there's the talent. People are maybe doing other things than jumping in these nationwide recognized events.
Well, let me ask you this, and I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but like there's a pretty big trend in the top end of the sport, like Francois and Killian. They're very clearly multi-sport athletes. Like they'll run from April to October, and then the second half of the year they're skiing. Like it's ski time, and we're just starting to see American athletes do that. Like Jim Walmsley, I think, is moving over to Chamonix like now, and he's going to train on the UTMB course, but then he's going to live there for like 2 more years, and he's going to become a multi-sport athlete, like skiing, etc., because he recognizes he can't do running year round with the toll on his body. And I know that the allure of the West Coast used to be like, yeah, you can run 12 months of the year here because of just certain weather patterns, but maybe there are benefits to the Northeast in the sense that it helps you be a more holistic athlete, because yeah, you maybe can't run 12 months of the year, but maybe you don't want to do that anyways for like longevity purposes.
No, that's a great point, and I'm totally on board with that. Just for your mental, your mental sanity to do like one sport year round. And I just grew up doing a little bit of everything in school programs, and I never specialized to do one sport the whole year, and I can't imagine doing that. So going professional, I can just see that path to burnout, injury, and just fatigue when you're just doing that one sport all the time. And it's a lot of pressure to put on yourself when you get and you can't mix it up. But yeah, I'd say you're seeing that a lot wherever you are, I think that the ski mountaineering sport as we know it is just going to continue to pull a lot of trail runners in because it is the perfect mix. You're using the upper body. I think someone came in the shop. I don't know if it was Ryan Kempson or one of the OCR guys, and they're just talking about, maybe we were talking about Jordan and the philosophy behind Nordic skiing, and that you're utilizing the upper body. All of a sudden you're just like, your blood volume goes up, or like the amount of blood you need to pump to circulate the body. You just become like, you just kind of level up when you become good at Nordic skiing. And yeah, I go to my grave saying that Nordic skiers are probably the best like aerobic athletes out there.
And it's cool that, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but there could be some sort of feeder system out there in Vermont, like at Craftsbury, for example, with all these world-class Nordic skiers getting a taste of summer mountain running and maybe seeing the light in ultras and wanting to dip their toes in some form.
Yeah, it's humbling. Like they jump in like the Mount Washington road race. I know that like Noah Hoffman did it right out, like with very little training, transitioning into road, got like 7th or ran like incredibly fast, and then went to win Loon Mountain race coming off of like a 40-hour week of training. Like
you
that
can do that
volume
in Nordic.
That's what he did in the summertime. Like whether he was like Nordic skiing, biking, like the mix and the volume he was doing, it's like you're seeing Ryan Atkins do big volume like that. But the U.S. Mountain Championships are coming up, and you'll see all these Nordic skiers pop in. Like I remember the Ragged Mountain 50K, David Sinclair and Simi Hamilton came and crushed. Like wasn't even a competition. And it's like, yeah, I think we're going to continue to see that at these big events. Like, who is this person? What's their background? And you're going to get a lot of Nordic skiers pop in that top 10 place.
David Sinclair's a monster. He just had a phenomenal Canyons 100K. I think he declined the golden ticket, but he was right there with Adam Peterman for most of the race. And I only bring that up because I follow him on Strava, and a week later he was in Truckee, California at altitude doing like a 20-mile marathon paced effort, like a week removed from the race. Like that guy's ability to not only put in a hard effort, but then to recover like it was nothing. I haven't seen anything like it. I can't think. I mean, almost everybody in that race is trashed after the fact. Like Adam Peterman, who he waited like 2 weeks. He took the full amount of time before he's like, okay, I think I'll be ready in time for Western States 9 weeks from now. Like it took a toll on him. And there's Sinclair just like, what's next?
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all when their training efforts are 5 hours, like, historically throughout their, I don't know, post like high school, their post collegiate career, their year round, like they have like their long runs or long activities, and they never wear GPS. It's just pure heart rate. Like they won't put anything. They just have to run a certain amount of time at a certain heart rate zone, and that's it. Like it's kind of crazy.
Well, I think you've painted a picture that from a high performance standpoint, there's nothing wrong in the Northeast. There's a lot of cool stuff going on, probably just athletes that aren't getting the recognition they deserve. But I do want to go back to your comments on like that LL Bean scene where like all of the branding and the advertising isn't using local imagery, local settings. Given that you work in this industry, like you own a running store, why do all of these marketing teams at the major trail running, skimo brands in the sport, why do they focus on the West Coast and then over in the Alps and not in like the White Mountains of New Hampshire? Because I think that, in my opinion, plays a part in why the region gets overlooked.
It's a few things. I mean, there's no denying it's easy to go out and get the shot at some like beautiful location. If with Fisher, I remember going out there in 2016 to do some photos, and we went to Silverton, got some powder shots, everything. It was just like cookie cutter, like stock photos of someone slashing a turn, dropping like a 10-foot cliff. And it was like, yeah, this is so easy. You just come out here and do it, and you get the deliverables of those classic shots. And I think here it's a little more work. The payout might be a little more difficult to get what you want, but even on those bad days, like you get some pretty beautiful, stunning imagery. And that it's been really fun. I mean, I think, I worked with Patagonia a bunch to do some on-spec work where we just go out, spray a bunch of photos, and then submit them and hope they take a couple, and you just never know what they're going to do with them. And now we have some photos in the Cambridge. They opened a Cambridge shop. Friend Brent, he got some photos in their Freeport shop, and you see it popped up in I think Scott Jurek took a screen grab of some return email that was my dog and I high-fiving, like in the whites. And it's super cool to see stuff like that make their way into corporate. But again, I think like headquarters being out west, and it's easy, it can be easy to shoot there. You're seeing some other companies here do a really good job because they're based here and it's accessible and easy. They don't have to travel. But yeah, you're right. It's just a matter of getting some good imagery and letting some of these companies know in their marketing department that are probably, I don't want to generalize, but like, I think there's this old school marketing. It's like, let's get a magazine ad. Let's do something here. I remember I'm talking to some companies, and I had this one conversation with this guy who's like a friend of mine, like I knew, and he's like, I don't know. He's like, I don't even know what you do. I'm like, why would I support you? Like, why would I give you money to do a video or something? And I was like, wow. I'm like, you are lost. I mean, I just think like, so it's funny. I have these videos that get hundreds of thousands of views and like from way back when, but it was just doing what I thought should be done. It's like these videos, those are like, we have a starving community between Boston, Portland, New York City. It's all accessible for them, this like really dense audience and user group, to come access mountains here in the Northeast. And it's not just the White Mountains. You've got the Green Mountains in Vermont. You have obviously Baxter State Park, and you've got Western Mass, the Adirondacks. Yeah, and Catskills. There's like mountains and places to recreate and hone your skills to go to these other places. Like, you got to travel. You can't just get locked up here. This isn't the end all, but their mountains are here. They're within a day's drive, and they should be highlighted.
Are the communities fragmented? Like, because when I think of Salt Lake and San Francisco and Seattle, like, it's so easy to see a group run fill up. It's so easy to find training partners to get through the week with if you're getting ready for a race. Could you paint that picture? Because I'm just trying to figure out where some of the missing variables might be, because obviously the branding is one of them, but I'm curious if like what that element looks like.
No, that's a great point. I think as social media is like the easiest way to get information, to disseminate information, is like social media. It's just, there's newsletters, there's Instagram, the Facebook groups, Instagram pages, accounts. There's just like so much more ways to get information out about community events, to form communities, that wasn't established, I think, in the not until fairly recently, in the past like 4 or 5 years. So you're getting user groups, that's paralleling like new user groups. And I when I moved back here, there wasn't like a running, a mountain trail running community. And now there's like a few of them, and that's just popped up in the past, I'd say the past few years, where there's like new events are forming, and that it's easier to see what's going on through social media with other communities. So Massachusetts has their trail animal. It was a trail animal running club, TARC. And then you've got the trail monsters out of Maine. And then here, in New Hampshire, 603 Endurance started probably, 2016-ish. And forming events that were fun, approachable, not just honing in on, their quote was not like one sport, every sport, but like really being inclusive and making things fun, and providing the space for people to come out and meet other people, because that's what it's about. Like, it used to just be read people's blogs, their trip reports, and you learn about stuff, but it was like, it was really fragmented. And now with new events and clubs, that it seems like more than ever easy and approachable to come out and meet people that will hopefully like be like a running partner, ski partner, something like that.
How come we don't see more elite athletes from the West Coast, male or female, adding East Coast events to their racing calendars, in your opinion?
Yeah, it feels like going where the money is, where the sponsorships are for that caliber that have like a limited window, limited travel budget. Like I feel like a lot of elite athletes don't get compensated well either. You know, like what's in it for them to come out to some of these events here, unless, you know, I'd say Tom Hooper does a pretty good job comping people, events, entry fees, like whether he gives them a free place to stay and just really kind of takes that legwork out that elite athlete would normally get paid to do in their region or another big name race. But yeah, so it's sort of limited to this like USATF circuit, which will get you onto a mountain running team or sort of this national level recognition. And we seem to get the 10K mountain championships, and we've also since had some of the 50K trail championships. And this year we've got, I think they added a vertical into it. So that's what Loon Mountain Race is going to be, the vertical. USATF, and Whiteface is going to be the mountain race, which feels backwards. It feels like the mountain race should be up here and the vertical, since they've got the vertical to do it. Yeah. Should be down there. But, yeah, I think it's as simple as that. It's like, if the races were supported by like prize purses and events, I mean, and sponsorships, then, you know, athletes would be coming out here more frequently. It's just like expensive. And a lot of your events out there, like here in Salt Lake, you can drive to quite a few of them. Yeah. That just must be pretty nice.
Well, what's stopping like 100K or 100-mile UTMB-style event from taking place outside of Jackson, New Hampshire, for example, or, you know, Sugarloaf, Maine, or Killington, Vermont? Like, because, you know, my imagination runs wild when I think of all the opportunities to put something big like that in there for, you know, the Walmsleys of the world, the Courtneys of the world, who are, you know, racing events like UTMB year in, year out.
Well, you know, we do have, let's see, we've got the Riverlands 100, that's in May. There's the Eastern States 100. Yeah. That's late summer.
That's
there's,
in PA.
And then there's the Mid-State Massive 100, which is from New Hampshire to Rhode Island, goes through Massachusetts. And what other 100-miler? There's the Vermont 100. That's all like up here, you know. I'm thinking of in the region of like New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts. But it takes, you know, what I'm realizing is it's like, it takes a lot of work to get to host a 100-miler. It's like an army of volunteers. It's a lot of organizational skills that I don't think, you know, a lot of race directors have that time to dedicate to something of that magnitude. And then to really utilize the terrain we have here, it's a permitting process, the land ownership, whether it's local, state, federal. It's a lot of navigational skills and patience. And we've had this conversation before. I always thought that there was this moratorium on permits granted in the White Mountains, because there is this course, the Kismet Cliff half marathon event that is in the White Mountains technically, and I thought that was the only one that was grandfathered in. That, and maybe the Tuckerman Inferno pentathlon, which has a section in the White Mountains as well. And there wasn't really anything else going on aside from those two. And then Ryan Waltz and Christina Fulsick had gotten some approval for some White Mountain races, and that was a big deal. So there was this one, the Kilkenny Ridge race, which was it's a 25-miler or a 50-miler if you do the out and back. There's Shakoroa Mountain Race. There's they just got a new one, the Jigger Johnson 100K or 50-miler.
Oh, nice.
And maybe I'm missing a couple more, but it really just what it came down to was someone or some people that were just motivated and were, you know, had the proven track record that they could host an event safely and navigate the permitting process, and then just like work with the governing bodies to make sure that everyone's on the same page. It's really communication. And so there's a few ingredients in there to make events like that happen that might be a little easier to navigate out west. I mean, it's still difficult. Like there's still the pure legwork that goes into it and setting up orchestrating the whole event. And I see it. I do a little event directing myself, and it's not at that level. It's like pretty small scale, like venues. It's not spread out over a 100-mile course. And to make a fun 100-mile course, it's not just a bunch of laps, like it would either doing like a point to point or a giant loop. That's a lot of terrain to cover, and it's slow terrain. Yeah. So your events and your cutoff times and everything might be drawn out a little longer. You might need more aid stations. It's, there's just a lot that goes into it. And so it takes like a unique individual to want to organize that, on top of the patience to work with the governing bodies, and then also just the ability to come up with something fun that's worth having. So all the events that are popping up are generally just ones that don't exist and that should exist. So it'll be interesting to see how the next few years unfold. I would say that the events that we do have seem to be filling up, and there's an audience that's ready to jump in and do some of these fun ultra distances.
Well, it's cool to know that the major bottleneck here is more an issue of like motivation and legwork than some stone wall in the regulation process, because I've lived out in Salt Lake City for 6 years now, and it seems like every single summer is increasingly feeling more like Armageddon out here from like a weather standpoint. And across the West, you never know for sure if events are going to happen from like a weather standpoint. Like there could be fires on the Western States course, or issues with the Hard Rock course, or smoke. It could be anything. And so from what I understand, these East Coast, Northeast races have no issue selling out, but there could be this great moment where if people want security in their summer racing schedule and inspiration, there's a place for them in New England.
Well, I won't discount the weather and the conditions here. Yeah, we might not have this. We just had a couple wildfires, and you want to have these fun races above tree line too to get the views, and that always comes at a risk. And not to mention, like the AT is like a no. That's like you can't do anything technically on the AT, but maybe that's another thing that just needs a couple people pushing and trying to get something to work. But I don't know. It's a challenge, and but you just got to be creative and patient.
What if you're putting your marketing hat on for a second, what advantages do you think the Northeast has over the West? Because a lot of folks that I hang out with in Salt Lake, for example, they're all former East Coasters from upstate New York or Western Mass or Maine, and they've all headed west for their quote-unquote opportunity and to satisfy their imagination and their mountain sports life. But I just think the region gets overlooked. So if you're trying to make a pitch for what makes New England a better place to be a mountain athlete, what would it be?
Well, I think at the core of it, you can do a little bit of everything here. So whether that's non-technical rolling dirt roads, we got it. If you want the technical stuff, we got it. If you want the vertical, we got it. It's like you can really pick apart whatever discipline you're in and make it happen here. It's like everything from flat road to hilly road to non-technical trail to mountain bike, technical trail to just straight up a mountain. There is like something for everyone, and there's plenty of it. I'd say like the other case is that there's that ability to be like a 4-season athlete, to pick in to switch over, and you can dedicate. If you really want to run in the wintertime, you can. It's going to be hard, but you can switch it up, and you can do get into mountain biking, ice climbing, skiing. There's so many different sports that are all right here. The windows are changing, it feels like all the time, but they're here, it's like we're skiing, people are still skiing, we're still skiing this weekend and it's June. So it's not like at a certain month you're done. There's opportunity to get out and do the sports you really like to do. I would say the other things would be like, to work on the technical terrain. I mean, that's always a big one that people really harp on, but it takes a lot of effort and skill to run on this terrain smoothly. It's like something that, to me, as I get older, feels like more and more risky to move fast in the terrain. And as these trails seem to get more and more eroded, more rocks showing up, more roots, it's slow. It's like relatively slow and steep, but it's rewarding nonetheless. It's such a fun difference in terrain from what you'd experience, out west. And I will say, there's people paint out west as being like buttery smooth, like perfect, but everything's relative. Like you get into a routine out there, you're on this like really smooth path, and then you hit a chunk, like some rocks, and it feels like the most technical thing you've ever hit. But here it's like, it's a reminder, you go out and it's a constant reminder that, it's like, you can have some really just frustrating experiences where there's blowdowns and wet rock and the footing's terrible, but then you'll make those like small stretches of perfectly smooth, like picturesque, single track, perfect and more appreciative. So I don't know, going back to your question is like the pitch for like being here and everything else. What really got me excited to be here was this feeling of discovery. Like it feels like everything out west has been done. Like, I don't know if that's true or not, but out here it was like, it felt like nothing had been done and nothing had been shared. And that was exciting. It's like, look on a map, go point to point, like make these new routes. Like when felt like during this time of like, FKTs are blowing up, it's like new ones are being added and all these creative routes in different regions. And that part was super exciting. And a big draw for me was like, you don't want to be doing what everyone else is doing. You sort of want to be creative and have a little, ownership over the area that you're in.
One other thing I'll add is, because I was just in your neck of the woods a week ago, it's consolidated too. Like out west, you have to drive far. Like if I'm going from Salt Lake down to the desert, it's, a 4-hour drive, no question, up to the Tetons, etc. Like there's a lot of driving that needs to be done. And I can get from like the major metros to the Whites in like an hour. It's awesome. So
yeah. And it's we were talking about this, is that I was like, it's crazy. You should have stayed at Joe Dodge Lodge or something. But for me to drive over to Franconia Notch, which is an hour and change for me to get to, is like, I rarely do it anymore because I live 10 minutes from Pinkham Notch now. Yeah. And it's like, it's all relative. You get, people that drive up from Southern New Hampshire, you get people that drive from Boston, people are driving up from Rhode Island, and then people are driving up from New York, people are driving up from Connecticut and Pennsylvania. And it's like, it's no big deal for them to do, 8 hours plus traffic. Mm. So it's all, everyone has their different threshold.
And maybe this is just me, but I'll just say it again. I'm way more nervous about the near-term negative effects of climate change out west than I am in New England. I just feel like we more viscerally feel what's coming down the pipe here in places like Boulder and Salt Lake City and San Francisco. I feel like when I go back every summer to New England, it's just a little bit safer. Like I feel like you see the running water, you see the green around you. Not everything's all burned and desiccate. It's just, I don't know. I feel like it's like a little bit of a safe haven.
That may be true, but the bugs, man, our bug problem is not getting any better. I mean, I feel like every May I'm like, how can it get worse than this? Like we have no-see-ums, mosquitoes,
ticks,
black flies, ticks, and then like deer flies are coming out, and then these caterpillar problems. Like right now we have all these, I don't know, gypsy moth or webworm, whatever the caterpillar is. It's like eating everything in sight, and you can hear it. You can hear like little things falling from the sky, and like caterpillars are getting into your hair and in your face. And then they defoliate all the trees they did last summer. So it feels like, it's crazy. These areas, these hiking trails, that it feels like spring because all this light's getting through that never used to get through. And then there's like a second spring when everything leaves out again in midsummer, but it's bizarre. So yeah, I would say bugs is, aside from Antelope Island, I mean, it's pretty nice out there.
It's true. That and, oh gosh, I'm overlooking the mountain range to our east of Park City there. The Uintas have a bug problem as well, but yeah, the Wasatch is kind of bug free, and that is definitely a competitive advantage for us. A couple more questions I have for you on the scene in the Whites, just to paint a further picture. What is, if someone's passing through for the day or two, like a weekend, what trail or mountain do they have to hike or run before they depart, and why?
Gosh, I think the easiest low-hanging fruit is going to be something out of Pinkham Notch, just because it is like so quick to get above tree line. Whether you do something like Glen Boulder or just get up to the base of one of the ravines, Tuckerman Ravine, Huntington Ravine, get up to Lion's Head. There's that part is just like beautiful to me. It's sort of why the Whites are so special, are the presidentials. But if I go into like kind of some of the lesser known spots, Evans Notch is like a quieter, nicer, like a quieter, younger version of Pinkham Notch. And that's such a beautiful spot that if you want to get away from people, like weekends are nuts everywhere, it feels like right now. But yeah, you have to get up on Mount Washington just to see it, because it is kind of a circus, but it's also extremely beautiful. And there's a ton of different trails, whether you're coming up from the west side, the east side, or link a big loop. It's that's like a must. And then, the other places that get hammered would be Franconia Ridge. It's because it's like getting above tree line and ridge line. It's beautiful.
Special.
You don't have a ton of it. There's not a ton of it in New England. So the little bits that we do get, it's like, that's where you want to be.
Yeah.
So anywhere you get above tree line in the White Mountains is, you can just pull open the map. It will show you where above tree line is. And as long as the weather's, you get a good view, you can be anywhere and be happy.
We talked about the Direttissima earlier. At this present moment, which FKT route in the Northeast intrigues you the most?
Well, the White Mountain 100, because it's like the new.
Yeah, talk about that.
The new Yeah, I think so. After Scott Jurek went through the White Mountains, and it was like I looked on Strava to calculate what I had just done, and I was like, oh wow, that's like 100 miles door to door from Moosalok to Route 2, and I thought that was like, that would be nice to like put in an effort. I don't, like, again, no idea what like a good time would be to do it, but like to do it in a ultra fashion, and it's set up to be like a perfect ultra. It's point to point. You have all these aid resupply spots if you wanted to do it that way. And it's, again, kind of the unknown. Like no one's done it. Like the fastest time on it right now is probably like Carl Save, right? Like he flew through the Whites, and I forget what time, maybe he did in 35 hours or with sleeping or something. I don't know. But Christina Fulsick ended up doing it from north to south. And, before she did it, I gave it an attempt and did it unsupported, carrying all my own food and water with no crew. And I picked like the hottest day of the year 2 summers ago to try it. Was it 2 summers ago? Yeah, to try it. And it was awesome. The first part of it was great, but it was just so hot, and I just could never catch up. Like just pushed it a little too hard, and ultimately had to tap out 80 miles in with, there's no way I was going to get it done in the time and fashion I wanted to get it done. Yeah. I could have finished it, but it was like my cardio was shot. So that's like, there's something aesthetic about 100 miles and the stats on it, like 34,000 vertical feet or so. And it just happens to cover the whole section of Appalachian Trail through the White Mountains. So it's like the perfect, bookends right there. And so that as far as an FKT goes, it's like it's sort of in this ultra world of like, okay, this is like, how does this stack up compared to other FKTs in that realm, or other ultras in that realm.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, there's nothing else like it as far as 100-miler in the Northeast that could stack up against, it's like world class, I think, as far as the specs go on it. And it might be nice just to have it as being an FKT or like an underground ultra, where I've thrown out the idea of having having parking vehicles at the different notches and just telling people, all right, like, here we go. Like, we're going to start it now. And like, you're sort of on your own, but if you want it, like, you can do it. And here are these aid stations going to be set up for like the next 48 hours. I think it'd be so cool. But I think that's definitely with that coming up, and Jack, shedding a little more light on it.
Yeah.
And see what he does. And if he can finish it, if he can finish it, like when someone's going as hard as he's going to probably go, like, anything can happen. But the other stuff that's really neat is like the supported 4,000 footer route, which Steph Bishop did last year. She had a torrential downpour in the middle of her effort, which really slowed her down. But I think I heard through the grapevine Will Peterson might be giving it a go, but Andrew Thompson has that record from, I don't know, way back when. Well, and so no one's really touched stuff like, I think, like records that have held up a long time. It's like, well, they must be pretty difficult, or else someone else would be hammering it. But I think we'll get more people doing some of these bigger efforts now that I think the pool is getting deeper.
I want to ask you one more question about the White Mountains 100. Do you think that route at some point in time should be considered a marquee FKT route in the Northeast? Because I think if I go to the FKT website, they list the Long Trail and I think it's the Presidential Traverse as the two routes in the Northeast that get like extra weight. So do you think that has an opportunity to be right up there with those two?
I think it will. I think it needs to have a time associated with it, and then I think it will be a premier thing at some point. How the Hut Traverse is a 24-hour thing, where people try to, they'll start at midnight and try to get done by midnight. And I think you could do something similar and be like 48 hours to get this done, with like, a similar, like the concept be the same. I think it will be, because what it does is it highlights like a lot of the mountain ranges and the, people are so gravitate towards in the White Mountains because they're above tree line, like we were talking about. But very, like, no one's tried it. So it's, I think getting the word out, maybe we'll see some more attempts, because it just takes a weekend, right? Like, what are you doing this weekend? Well, let's, go find out how far we can go on the AT through the Whites.
And I think Jack is another good guy to give it a shot. I have a couple friends in the skimo scene out here, and I don't know if this is hyperbole, but they are declaring him the best American mountain athlete that no one knows about yet. So maybe he goes out there and does something special, goes under 24 hours. Is it next weekend he's doing it?
Yeah, he's just looking at the weather right now. So it's, I think everyone's sort of on call at the moment.
Yeah.
Stuff is showing up at our shop as we speak, like all his nutrition and packs and shoes.
Cool. Last question on this front. Favorite Northeast trail race? So if I'm somebody from the West Coast that's headed your way between the months of, let's say, June and September, what do you recommend someone signing up for? It could be any distance, 50K, sub-ultra, 100-mile, whatever.
Gosh, I mean, I think like it's so easy to just associate these races with like certain points in like your career and like your the community and like things that like have a good energy to them. But I really have enjoyed. I look at races that I've done a lot, and I think I've done the Ragged 50K a few times, and I think that's what's nice about that is it's really approachable from a few different levels, where it's not super technical terrain. It has a good flow to it. A lot of it's like dirt road at the beginning, but it still has a big climb at the finish, and you can do it as part of a 75-mile stage race too. So if you're into that, it can scale. So you do 20 miles and then 25 miles, and you end with like the 35 miles, something like that. But I would say that that's just been like a really fun event that 603 took over. It used to be, I think called the Emerald Necklace. And I don't know, it's just a race that it's in August. It's the timing's good. It's fun. It's probably usually hot. So check it out.
Cool. I do want to make sure we talk about the store before we close up. And is it Ski the Whites?
Yeah, Ski the Whites is the umbrella, and then Run the Whites is the running section of it, and then Ride the Whites is the mountain bike or e-bike, gravel bike section of it. And we have a coffee category too now, which is the Ski the Whites Coffee Co.
Cool. And was this all created post time with Scott Jurek? Was this another one of those ideas that came about just feeling motivated from that experience?
Yeah, that was right after, I think. I backlogged some blog web, like I made just like I made a blog to document, this is the Pemi Loop, this is like sort of like my little training journal, but turned into here's some videos and trying to figure out, okay, what do I do with that? I need Ski the Whites, because that's what, I still consider myself a skier first. I might do a little, but even though like I'd probably do more running in my life, I for sure do more running in my life, but skiing was where I felt like I could really, plant my flag here in the White Mountains. So Ski the Whites, how do I get more traffic to my website? Well, Ski the Whites. There was Hike the Whites at the time. And I was like, yeah, let's do skiing. And so what started as like a blog quickly, like I was like, I need to start a business because I need a job. So no one was really renting backcountry gear or doing what I thought a great job or carrying the gear that I wanted or that I was using that was specialized in this category. So I opened an account with Fisher Skis. They gave me an account. My friend worked for them. They're out of Auburn, New Hampshire, which is just a couple hours away. And I was like, all right, I got a dealer account. And I was like, went through the whole application process. And so having that account let me sort of help get other accounts. But my blog just turned into my business. I was like, well, I'm too lazy to change my name. I'll just keep Ski the Whites and go from there.
Wow. So there's a lot of questions I have here, but the first is, obviously you're a passionate athlete, but you're also a business owner. How do you balance the demands of running the store on a day-to-day basis and still fulfilling that, I'm assuming, original mission of just being in the mountains, recreating as often as possible?
That's like a really difficult proposition there, is like, you get into this because you love the outdoors and spending, like I spent so much time hiking and running and skiing. And that's why I got like pulled into Scott Jurek's world, was because I was the guy. And you gain reputation from just like day in, day out, being consistent and doing what you love, doing what you do. And so I became known as the guy that's like running around in the White Mountains because I was doing that and I was sharing it, and you gain a reputation. And like, I really wanted to honestly become an expert in the terrain out here and the lay of the land. And so by doing that, like I had like a little bit of a following, or just like, some trust in the community that, okay, Andrew knows what he's talking about. He's out there testing this, using this gear. And everyone talks about the East Coast as having like really technical terrain and a little different use case in gear as you would out with an area with higher annual snowfall, like Colorado, like Utah, like California. And so our tool sets are a little bit different and a little more specialized. So I took that experience, and that reputation and sort of parlayed it into the shop. And the shop started as these accounts out of my place where I was living, in this farmhouse, and my truck. And I would just let friends use the gear I bought with some demo bindings and just sort of introduce them and let them know that I have this gear, that it's available. And like, I just turned my website into an e-commerce shop. And so everything I brought in, I would list online. And so I was sort of searchable. And it just was so slow that first year, but I felt like I was on the track.
Yeah.
I was on the path of doing something right. But that first year, when things were so slow, you spend so much more energy into like marketing and building your brand identity somehow. And that was just going out and skiing all the time. I remember 2016, 17 was my first winter with an account. And in February, I spent 3 weeks straight just skiing in the stretch of like incredible conditions that you could go anywhere, just any riverbed, any peak, go ski it. And then that summer, a place opened up at Black Mountain Ski Area, and that sort of changed everything. So now I have a brick and mortar space, but it's at a ski resort that's only open 3 months out of the winter. So it still wasn't much work, but it like really gave me leverage to continue down this path. Cause easily I could have just been like, well, I had 10 sales and didn't make any money. But I had a really fun time, and getting that space at Black Mountain, wasn't sure what I was going to do with it. This ski patroller, Dave Abel, let me know about it. I thought maybe it'd be a gear drop because, if people are trying to get up to Pinkham Notch, guides are taking clients out, maybe I could just set them up with gear. But it really was the opposite. It was like the general public could now see what modern backcountry gear looked like. They could try it out in a safe environment at a groomed ski resort. And then I could also host events there to like, again, build community. And it was just like this perfect storm of right place, right time, right category. It's a growing category. A nonprofit I helped start a nonprofit at the same time, like called Granite Backcountry Alliance. So here's a user group that's building out skiable terrain in New Hampshire and Western Maine and resurrecting some of these old ski trails. And that was like a feeder system, because now you have like these skiers that need gear. And now I've got the gear, and it just went hand in hand. And so with events that next year, it just kept like incrementally growing, but still tiny, like really tiny operation, just me. And then I got help from one of my first participants in my ski series, Friday Night Lights. So a nighttime ski touring series. I introduced this gentleman, Monty McIndoe, into backcountry skiing gear. And like, next thing you know, he's like my right-hand man and my co-event director, which is crazy. So he was like 54 at the time, I think. And yeah, it just like kind of continued to grow incrementally. And like here we are now in a retail location that was like, I had this moment where I was in my old shop, and it's a converted nursery. So it's this little like 10 by 10 room. And I used to, I started spilling out of it to the point where like people were in the locker room. So they kicked the employee, they converted the employee lounge into my space. So I feel really bad, but everyone got kicked out, and it afforded me like more storage and more area to just, really keep gear. I up front in my old room, in the old space, was like where I rented out most of the gear. But it was those like first steps where I had this moment where I was like, is this what I'm doing with the rest of my life, working out of this little nursery? And just knowing that I was missing out on opportunity for the bigger picture of the calendar year, where Black Mountain's not open. There's like no one coming through that space. Yeah. It's dead. And so I was like, I need to make a move. And that's when I got into the space I'm in now, which is like a really funky old gallery studio space building. Spot. And I ended up just buying the whole building and renting out part of it to a ski and bike mechanic and a carpenter that came along for the ride, that they knew when I was getting the space, they needed space to rent. And yeah, so since then it's just like really shifting gears and adopting the retail life. But yeah, that's where I'm at now.
Well, backtracking just a little bit, there are a fair number of folks who listen to this show that are interested in entrepreneurship and channeling that towards our world of running and skiing and biking. I think I'm curious, and they're curious, what a minimum viable mountain sports retail store looks like. And in your case, it sounds like it was a basement, a website, and favorable dealer relationships. Is that a path that you recommend when you want to like test or get proof of concept before you start to scale?
Man, I don't know what the right path is. I didn't have any real mentors, and anyone really showing me the right way to do it. It just like, it seemed like this works. I think, I was lucky to have Hillary support me throughout all this. Like she, paid the bills, like paid for rent, got groceries. And the whole time I'm just out playing, like in her eyes, it's like, and I really was, I mean, I was out there in the mountains doing lots of fun stuff. And, you know, I think she had a really hard time with that because it's like hard not to be jealous if your partner's out doing all this awesome stuff. But in my mind, it just felt right. It felt like what I should be doing. And if my back was really against the wall, I would have taken another job. I would have figured it out. I feel confident enough. Like I have a college education and I have a skill set where I think I could figure it out. But if I didn't give this a chance, like what would I, you know, who knows what opportunities I'd miss or, you know, the regrets about it. But I think, yeah, in this day and age, like you don't need much, but you need to be persistent and, follow like your gut to some degree and get help when you need it. Don't be afraid to ask for help. It took me a little while to get like comfortable passing off tasks and like trying not to be the bottleneck and to be efficient and be like, okay, you've got this under control. Do it. I mean, Monty, who came into my life, was he was the retail controller at J. Crew, which is a huge position. And then he became the CFO at Supreme before he came here to go put skins on skis and empty my trash. Insane. Yeah. And it's like, he just showed me that like having a little bit of work ethic, showing up, being of service, like goes so far in life. And like, he's someone that anyone would want in their corner. So it's like learning little skill sets along the way, which might not seem as obvious. Yeah. I mean, to just getting the machine oiled so that like you can do other stuff with your time. But, yeah, you really don't need much.
Well, you said a moment ago that, you know, there was this early stage of the business where you were quote unquote going out and playing in the mountains, but I'm curious, were there any unintended business benefits to getting all of that content documented on YouTube? Like, did any of the awareness you were getting with your YouTube channel funnel back to the business in any way, like building this sort of media arm?
Yeah, it's a little frustrating because I wish I did. It makes you just wish you did a better job of it or stick with it a little further, because I did get like enough traction, like, you know, regional traction where people know me from those videos. Because like, if you want to see what this ski run looks like, chances are some crappy POV video I put up might be on the internet, but like there's some really beautiful stuff and stuff I'm proud of. I'm like, man, I used to hustle and I put in a lot of work to be up in certain hours and certain conditions and I pull the camera out. And it was like, yeah, I paid my dues. I went out there, and it's really fun when people come in. They're like, I started backcountry skiing because of your videos or something. You know, I've been out there and run into people and they'll recognize me from it. And I think that's cool. And it's fun. I think it's like one of these like little ego things, but you know, I'm in a growing category. Like, I'm not blind to that. It's like the majority of my business is people that just want to get into the sport, and we're like the store that has the stuff. And I think all like my coworkers and everyone's done a great job and making it friendly so that if someone has a good experience here, they're going to tell their friend and they're going to come in. But it certainly doesn't hurt to have like good photos and videos out there too, to just sort of back up what you're talking about. Like, this guy must know something if he's out there scrambling up that and skiing this. And I don't know. It's like, I try to envision how I look at people's credibility and stuff. And I think that often you can walk into a big box store and be like, this guy has how do I know what this guy, if he's just rattling off what the sales guy for the brand said, or if he's like really out there using it. And I find that, you know, that line's erased here in the shop because like we all do it all.
Well, a couple more questions here. Do you think, given the experience you've had to date, it's possible to be a pure run store, like run specialty store, ski specialty store, or do you need to pair that retail component with like selling coffee and hosting events and creating content and just finding excuses to bring people to the store?
I think it depends where you live. You know, I'm up here in a remote, like fairly remote, like tourist town where I don't necessarily have the foot traffic to support just being one thing. If you're in Boston, like if we had a shop in Boston, we would not have to work in the summertime. Like we would just be flat out so busy, but you'd have to live in Boston. So up here, you definitely have to hustle a little more. You know, when I moved into this space, I had no, we didn't have any bike accounts or any intention of doing bikes. It just happened that my friend Jake, who was helping me out right as COVID hit, came along for the ride. He needed a job and pretty much just created one for himself by like being, I'm the bike guy. Let's do bike stuff. And took me a little while to get my head around it because I didn't want to become the cliche ski and bike shop. There's plenty of those around, but there's a reason why. You know, they're floating them through the summer. And bikes are, you know, there's a lot more crossover with skiing and biking than skiing and running. Right. And at that point I was into running. I didn't really have, I didn't even have like my shoe account set up yet. And it's like, how can you be a specialty shoe store, like a trail running store, and not even have a shoe account? And what I saw was an opportunity to like copy the model of backcountry rental skis with e-bikes, which, you know, it's sort of working. It's not nearly, you know, as exciting or successful as the ski thing, but it's something to bring new customers in the shop. And it is a little bit of a hustle. You know, I feel like I have to market that a lot more, but, you know, doing mountain bikes and gravel bikes and the coffee and events, it's just like a continual way to grow your customer base. And that's all it is. You want to grow your family that will support you. And that's what, in hindsight, I've been doing through social media, through events, and then through retail sales. And it's like you're creating this giant family that you feel like you know everyone. You have this shared common love for these different sports, for this region. And as a result, it affords you the opportunity to like take it in whatever direction you want.
Any other lessons or advice you've picked up over the years that you think members of the audience that want to follow a similar path would appreciate to hear?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a hustle. Like, it doesn't feel like it at the time, and I just had these moments of reflection when, like, you ask questions like that, like, it gets you thinking about how did you end up here? And it's like, man, I really like the story of like going to UTMB, like that first year when Doug Mayer, who has a company, Run the Alps, based out of Chamonix. He is from Randolph, New Hampshire, just up the road, or has a place up there. And he just hit me up one day and was like, why don't you come out to UTMB? And I was like, do what? Like, why? What do you mean? Like, of course, like I want to go to UTMB, but like, I didn't feel like I couldn't race it. It was never on my radar because it just felt like so next level. And he's like, yeah, just go work for, like, you know, you do videos and stuff, like just go with Trail Runner magazine or something. And so I was like, okay. So this is like 2016 in the spring, maybe May of 2016. So it was really felt late, May or June. And I was like, yeah, I'll just get media credentials and go out to UTMB. I'll buy a ticket. I'll figure it all out. But like, it was so cool where I reached out to Trail Runner and they're like, yeah, sure, you can be our media guy. And I don't even know if they, like, I probably just pitched it to UTMB, their press people first, but like that, I just went there, they put me up, gave me accommodations for like at least half the trip, and I paid for everything. And I went out and just burnt myself to the ground. It was like the coolest experience. You know, I'm sure like mostly trail runners probably listen to this podcast, but like you're in the event, and there's nothing as powerful as being out at UTMB, like during UTMB week. And so to maximize my time there, I did everything. Like, they give you a media schedule and they're like, do you want to follow TDS? Sure. Do you want to race an event? I was like, sure. I did the Vermont 50 last year. I can qualify for OCC. So I'm going to go do OCC. Yeah. And then like, I'm going to get no sleep. I'm going to stay up until 2 a.m. editing videos. And then I'm going to get up at like 4 a.m. to get on a bus to go follow events or race. And, you know, by the end of it, I was so worked. Like, that I ended up getting shingles, and like I came home from that and I was like, whoa, I just like, what just happened? And you know, the coolest part about that was like the lesson learned is like, just make shit happen. It's like, sometimes you might have to fake it to get in there. There's like the chicken or the egg. It's like, if you don't have this beautiful portfolio, like you got to start somewhere and do it. And whether you get like someone to support you to do it or not, it's like, do you care about it enough? Then yeah, go do it. You don't need some brand to back you up, but also don't be afraid to ask. And then like, yeah, I look back on that experience and it like paid for itself. Like enough YouTube revenue from some of those trips, like paid for the trip itself, which is like, I never you can't expect that to happen, but it's like a lesson in like the hard work and the experience I gained on that. Like I went back there the next 4 years. It's pretty crazy. Like those experiences, like I almost got arrested for flying a drone, like during the start. Like I got this amazing footage, but like, yeah, drones weren't huge back then. And the police, like, they let me go. They confiscated my press passes. The press people were so pissed. They're like, oh, like you're holding us up, and like they're trying to go to the next stop. And I had this really cool driver though that gave me his press credentials for the rest of the time, so I was fine. Like I was able to keep going. But yeah, I don't know. There's like, I think nothing. It's rare that anything's going to happen overnight, but it's like this constant repetition and like so many metaphors for like run training, go into business life. But it's like, yeah, you just got to keep showing up, and eventually you'll hit a point where things are working or they're not. Well, I'm sure you're experiencing it too. You're like, you know, you put stuff out there, and if you get positive feedback, you keep going, and whatever that feedback is. But like, you know, whether that's you like it, listeners like it, your sponsors show up and like it, whatever it is. But it's like, it's a feedback loop, and if you're getting positive feedback, you definitely stick with it.
Also, the long tail effect of it too, like the serendipitous stuff you never could have predicted. Like what comes to mind for me is, you know, I did CCC last year, and one of the biggest reasons why I did it is the YouTube algorithm served me the course preview video that you and Hillary did maybe in 2018 or 2019. And that was like the final kick in the pants that I needed to go and sign up for it. So it's amazing how you can put something out in the world, you know, at a moment in time, and it just lives there forever, and you never know who's going to come across it, what they're going to do with it, and then how in some way it funnels back to whatever you're doing. Like, I mean, I stopped at the store last week during my trip to the Whites, and I didn't spend that much money, but like there was a little bit of business, and now we're doing this podcast. And honestly, it probably started with that YouTube video. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah. You never know. I think that's a perfect way to put it. I think I really wanted this adventure storyteller life that maybe I'm just not cut out for, or I didn't like give it my all, but it got certainly like helped. I'm glad I did it. Like, I'm glad. I love media. I love taking photos. I like doing all this stuff. It's hard to balance it all. Like when you're doing the business, like just running a shop and you're just taking out the trash and vacuuming and doing shipping orders. It's like, eventually I'll have people hopefully in place that can help me do that stuff. I mean, I still get fulfillment out of the day-to-day things, but it's the other stuff that I really like and I want to get back to. But it's like, you got to pay your dues. Yeah. Like, you want to build something up. You got to put your time in, and you can't afford to just like hire an army of people to do it for you. And also it's fun. It's fun to do it. It's fun to be on the front lines. And yeah, eventually, like, hopefully I can circle back and be part of more creative projects.
Couple miscellaneous questions here before we close up. The first, you mentioned that you were a pretty passionate surfer at one point in life. And I'm curious because surfing has a really powerful culture. Like I'm looking at my coffee table and I have Surfer's Journal on it, which I think is one of the best pieces of content in any sport, bar none. And I'm not even a surfer. Are there any aspects of surf culture that you really enjoyed that you miss because for whatever reason, it's not something you can recreate in like the trail running scene or the ski scene or the bike scene?
Man, surfing's challenging. It's a lot like powder skiing. It's better with less people. It's like selfishly you want to get a wave, and like you can share conditions that are skied up with anyone. That's fun. But like if it's powder and you want first tracks, it's like a wave. It's like you can only have one person on a wave. And it makes it really challenging to want like a ton of people out there to participate with you. I think that world, a few things. One is like, there's no better sport than surfing. I love skiing. Like, don't get me wrong, but like there's something so powerful, so magical about harnessing an ocean wave for momentum and what you can do with that. And it takes you to some really beautiful places. But sometimes I wonder in hindsight if like I squandered all this time hunting waves when like that was the thing. I could have moved anywhere, right? Like I could have moved to Portland, Maine and like really tried to surf. But the problem is the surf goes flat. You have all this downtime. Even in like these world-class spots, there's like, it's not good all the time. It's like these short windows, and the mountains are always open. That's like my saying is like the mountains are always open. Like you can go out and no matter what condition, what the weather, it doesn't matter what the weather's doing, you can get out and do something. Whereas surfing, it's like, yeah, you can go stand up paddleboard or like do something. I used to come back and paddle around the lakes just to keep my arm strength up, which was like so pitiful. But yeah, the culture is weird. I don't know. It's kind of why I moved out of California. It was like, didn't have roots there. I didn't feel like the relationships were as deep. Surf culture is pretty, I don't know. It's difficult, I'd say. It's like, it's cool. Like I definitely admire a lot of it. There's a lot of surf icons, and I followed the world tour. Like I went to Pipe Masters in 2006 and weaseled my way some credentials there. But, yeah, I'm at the Volcom house, like watching like the pipe finals. You can't beat that. Like it's so cool. And I think what surfing did was pretty interesting, watching the ASP World Tour, which is now the WSL, have professionalized the sport. And I know you talk a lot about professionalized running. Well, take a look at what they've done. And they have an audience. They're global. They've done, like, whether you like it or not, they've done an incredible job marketing and getting finances and making one tour as like, this is it. So I would say that if there's something to like glean off of what they've done, it's like, look at what they've done with professionalizing their sport and doing it in the recent years. Like that happened pretty recently, like when they like restructured and organized the sport.
That's super cool. We'll link to that in the show notes as well. And yeah, you got me to a T. That's one of my passion projects via this show. Next question. Is there anything that you used to strongly believe in your past? It could be athletic related, philosophically, etc., that you've recently changed your mind about? And if so, what prompted the change?
I don't know, that there's one training method. Like everyone, you think you have it figured out. And because I think we all just try to get the best out of ourselves. We're all runners or skiers. We want to be fit, be as fast as we can be. And we've just, you read like one training plan and you're like, this is how you do it. This is the secret. This is going to get you there. And then you hear someone else. Like I listened to your interview with Jeff Colt, who's like, yeah, I have a stand-up desk and I'm just on my feet a lot. And, I do a bunch of other sports, and you're like, whoa, it gets you thinking, and he has success. But there's a lot behind that. I feel like not everyone is upfront about like their gifted talent and their baseline they're working with and their age and all this other stuff. Like I'm 41 now and feeling like trying to see what I can get. How fast can I get? Can I touch? Like, can I get back to where I was 5 years ago? Or is this kind of like it? But, yeah, there's no one way to do things. I just think like everyone's going to have a different style of training, different motivations, different health issues. But the consistency and like just showing up every day is going to be like the common denominator. That's it. Like there's no tricks. It's hard work. And like, if you want to get better at something, it's just like, be consistent, keep at it. Like I forget sometimes. I'll have to look back at my logs to see, why was I fast here? What did I do here? And it's like, oh yeah, you've been training for like, 20 weeks, whether you realized it or not. Like you were out doing stuff all the time. So yeah.
What's a recent book, movie, podcast that you've consumed that has left you feeling inspired that the audience might want to consume as well?
Yeah, you got to see Sanctity of Space. I get so motivated watching like mountaineering films and Sanctity of Space. So I grew up, not grew up, but like when I lived in Madison for 5 years, down the road was Freddie Wilkinson, and he went to college with my brother, and he's just like a badass mountaineer. And so him and Renan and another guy were in Alaska climbing the Moose's Tooth, which is super cool to see this all kind of like come full circle. But I was out there when they were climbing, and in with him and Renan and Talkeetna at God, what's that dive bar? Whatever the bar is there. We were in town, and they were filming some stuff, and that was in 2000. When was that? 2012, maybe 2011, 2012. They're filming just because like, they're like, oh, maybe we can get some B-roll. We can create like a film or something. But that was 2012. It's 10 years later, and they just released this movie. It was like this passion project where they, I don't know, weaseled some funding, some grants. They got like a phantom camera on a airplane and like got some crazy footage, but those guys hustled, and like, they put together this awesome film that's like played in theaters, and it's on demand now. And it's like, that's so badass.
Awesome. We'll link to that in the show notes as well. Last question. If you could put a message on a billboard for all to see, what would it say and why?
Yeah, it would be like two-sided. So you can see it from each way. And one would be like, be kind. I think that's a nice mantra to have. We use that in skiing, kind. It's like, it's easy to be closed off and be territorial about wherever you are and stuff. But like, man, it makes a huge difference to just be nice to someone. If they're having trouble with their gear, they don't know where they are, the questions, you just never know who you're going to meet. And then the other side, just be like, don't be a dick. So it'd be two-sided, same message, really is like be welcoming to the sports you're into, because you never know who you're going to meet, and it makes a huge difference. Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I want to personally thank you for carrying the banner for the White Mountains and the Northeast mountain sports scene to some extent, what you've built there in Jackson, New Hampshire. When I think of people in the sport that I appreciate, it's folks like you that are really putting a lot of effort into it, devoting a lot of your life's work to it. So thanks for all of that. And obviously the next time I'm up in the area, I'll stop by again. Your store is a cool spot. We'll link to it as well in the show notes. Anything else you want to leave the audience with before we go? Nah, that's it. Thanks so much, Finn, for all you do. We're starving for content. So, I wish I could put out more, but it's great to have these episodes to listen to, and it's fun to see the mix and get a little bit of inspiration. So thank you for the work you're doing. Cool. Well, maybe we'll do it again soon. And until next time, thanks.